I haven't done this in a while, where I've recorded this one, and I recorded it and uploaded it and all that stuff and added all the details to it. And then walked away from my computer and I sat down and I was just spending a minute or two to think about what I had said and the general ideas and concepts and how did I get them across? How did I get to the point I wanted to get to? And I really didn't feel like I got there. And afterwards of sitting there, I felt like I had in my head a much better idea, more succinct expression of what I wanted to share. So I'm going to re-record it. That's what this is right here. And upload that. And also, I think I need some entrance music or a little intro music. Not entrance music, intro music. That's a different topic for a different time. And I'll do it in this one because we did in the previous one. But I wanted to kick it off by just sharing a quote that was shared with me from somebody who had listened to one of the previous podcasts. And one of the reasons I love this so much is because I'll receive these quotes in DMs and messages. Not very often, but when they happen, they're very heartfelt, always welcome, always insightful. And people will share their thoughts, summaries of things I've spent 10 minutes rambling on, barely getting to a point. And often the things they share sum up exactly what I wanted to say with such concision and brevity. I'm both jealous and also very happy because it also gives me another new perspective of how to look at it. But this was from and there's actually two recently. But the first one, and we'll talk about the second one in a different podcast. But this first one was in relation to the podcast about humility. And the quote is, "Hubris gets you to the starting line. Humility gets you to the finish line." I absolutely love this. There's so much I like about it because it's true. I think you sometimes got to be a little crazy to get to that starting line. Maybe you got to believe a little bit more than is actually the case. It's kind of a fake it till you make it thing. But if you want to get to that finish line, I think if you want to get there in a way that is admirable to you and most valuable to you, you need to have a lot of humility along the way because getting to that finish line is not easy. And if you have too much hubris, sounds like a bad food. If you have too much hubris, you don't ever get there. And maybe you get somewhere and you tell everybody you got there anyway. Or maybe you report back that you got a certain placing when you got to the finish line, one that you didn't actually achieve or earn. But what's interesting about humility, it's defined as the quality of having a modest view of one's value or importance, which in order to have continual improvement in effort and a long-term improvement in effort, your estimation of your importance needs to be at a certain level where you can't feel like you know everything. And there's probably a too low. There's probably a level below humility that is also counterproductive to forward movement. And I think that's where that hubris kind of kicks you off the finish line, which I really like. So I loved that quote. I thought it was really quite wonderful. So hubris gets you to the starting line. Humility gets you to the finish line. I'm excited to share one of the other quotes we had recently, especially it was on the topic of change, but maybe slightly related. I won't try to connect the two. I feel like there's some relation between hubris and humility and the other thing I wanted to talk about. But the other thing I wanted to talk about was going back to the language we use to describe ourselves, our life, things in our life, our circumstances. And I wanted to kind of talk about how do we approach, discuss, think about, navigate things like hardship or obstacles, challenge, tragedy, fill in the blank. And one of the things that got me thinking about this is I've heard the quote before, and this is related to terminal illness or sicknesses, where it said you don't want to become your illness. And there are different stages that I was reading about, and identity states related to an illness. There can be, rejection. This is sort of like stages of grief, like a denial phase. And then the second phase that I was reading about here was referred to as engulfment. and they discuss it as engulfment is the opposite of rejection, where you, and I really liked this phrasing, is where you embrace your, here they say illness for our discussion, you embrace the hardship, the obstacle, the challenge to the point of preoccupation. And I think what they're saying here, it's not preoccupation with, I'm going to pay really close attention to this thing so I can move on from it, so I can look at what else is on the table that I can fill my life with aside from this illness, challenge, hardship. You become obsessed with it to the point where it becomes your identity. You are defined by it. And, when I hear people talk in language like this continuously, and this kind of goes back to the venting thing, a once in a while is never the issue. But this continual identification of this hardship, this challenge, this obstacle, I wonder where that leads us. And the other thing I think I've started to notice when I see these things kind of happening, especially in larger groups or tangential groups, maybe there's a group you care about and you see them go through some sort of hardship, is that it almost feels like a knee-jerk reaction for us as humans when we see somebody else going through a hardship is to attach ourselves to that hardship. Oh, they're struggling, they're suffering. Yeah, this is really hard. I'm going to suffer a little bit too. I'm going to let them know I'm struggling a little bit too. As long as they're suffering, as long as they're struggling, I should probably be struggling and suffering too. There almost seems like there is just like a reflex to that level of codependence that I think can be really counterproductive in your life if you sign yourself up for that pretty regularly. And I do think there are some instances in life where what happened, couldn't have happened any other way. But that doesn't mean you're stuck in that position. That doesn't mean you can't ever move on from that position. I think there's this moment, and I think the wording here is really interesting. You're embracing your illness to the point of preoccupation, where it becomes your only focus. I think you can become hyper-focused on a challenge. But there is, and productively when you're hyper-focused, there's this underlying current of, I'm hyper-focused because I want to understand what else I can do aside from just be preoccupied by this thing. And to me, that is one way out. It's not foolproof. It's not perfect. I feel like there's cycles and waves to this thing. But if we walk around always pointing back to this point in time when this hardship occurred, or this challenge occurred, or the challenge we're taking on now, and that just becomes the rhetoric and the constant discussion, we can't move on from that thing. We are almost willingly stuck in that time when that hardship, that obstacle started. Now, though I've known people, but I don't have terminal illness or chronic illness, and so I think, some might say I'm comparing apples to oranges here, but I actually felt like the comparison was pretty on the nose between the two, except for, especially because there are a lot of cases where most of us deal with challenges that are not terminal. But holy shit, do we make them terminal by the language we use and the way we frame them to others and the way that we frame them with others. And so it's like you're basically taking something that could be temporary, maybe even ephemeral in some cases, and you are giving it a whole, immortal lifespan by the way just by the way that we talk about it. And so I think there are some other things that we can do that can help us navigate this, and one of them is simply you can be, if you see somebody else who's struggling with something or having a hardship or endured some sort of tragedy, it's not necessarily your job to throw that on your shoulders and carry that forever. I think you can be respectful. You can be reverent of somebody else's struggle. You can perhaps put out a helping hand. You can just be an active listener. Sometimes that's really good. And, I was talking to somebody today and it was obvious to me that they were just having some challenges with some things. And, I was just wanted to share a helping hand because I had gone through some similar challenges. And it's really hard, when they had said like, basically, hey, I'm really struggling, or I've been struggling with this thing. It's really hard for me, to not be like, well, let me fix it, or just to, to spiral down this road of infinite commiseration. It's challenging just to sit there and say, yeah, I hear that for sure. Okay, let me know if you need anything, and just let that go. Just a kind, here to help, here to listen, but that's it. I think it's a really challenging thing to do. But one of the things is, if you find yourself constantly in this cycle of things aren't going well, and they're not going well because they're just really hard, or because of this one obstacle or this collection of obstacles, I think one of the simplest things you can do is say, hey, things aren't going well, but here's what else I can focus on. Or here's why things went wrong. Or when things were going wrong, here's what I could have done differently, or what I could do differently next time. Throwing in that little but, that concept of what if, I think is a really, really powerful way to keep moving on from these kinds of things. But that was on the forefront of my mind today. And maybe even you have to have a little dose, a little drop of hubris to think, yeah, you know what? Things aren't going well, but I have some equipment to help them go better. And if not, I can find some great people around me who can help them help them to get going better. It was an interesting one because I don't want to be stuck there, and I don't want to think like that. I don't want to wallow. So we're going to keep moving on. I can't wait for the DM or text on this one where someone just wraps all this up in a tight little quote. So putting that out there to the universe, I'm waiting on you all. Thanks, and more tomorrow.